So in today's video, we will be looking at displacing the indigenous people. Okay, in this chapter, we will be discussing about how, currently we have the United States of America, Australia, and all these places we can find lot of white people or Europeans. Okay, initially it was not the case. Initially, these places were held by Native Americans, natives, who were brown or red in color. They were actually called red Indians. Okay, but currently in the present scenario, we cannot find them, or their numbers have reduced drastically. In the case of Australia, we have aboriginals, those people who were the natives of that island, but today we cannot find them, or very few people are present there. Okay, what happened to them? How the highly or huge population of native Indians disappeared, and how it was replaced by a large European population. European population. These things are to be understood by this chapter. Only these things where I'll be giving a brief overview of the chapter. If you want, you can read through it. But it is other than having an understand or having a viewpoint on this chapter, nothing much will be needed or necessary. Okay, European imperialism. Okay, we have seen about Spain and Portugal in our previous video. Okay, and after that, Spain and Portugal empires could not expand much. Okay, and it was taken over by what? France, Holland, and England. Okay, they began to extend their trading activities and establish colonies in America. And Ireland was also virtually a colony of England. Okay, from the 18th century, it became obvious that while it was the prospect of profit that drew people to establish colonies, there were significant variations in the nature of the control established. Okay, in South Asia, trading companies like East India Company made themselves as political powers. They defeated, in our case also we can see, they defeated our local rulers and they began to rule our country. In Africa, Europeans traded in the coast, except in South Africa. Only in the late 19th century did they venture into the interior. Okay, all these things. Actually, the Europeans were going on a revolution, or we can say they were going on a hunt to civilize the world. Okay, that is what they said, but it was purely for economic reasons. Now we are coming for the case of North America. Okay, the continent of North America extends from the Arctic Circle. Before we go into this, I think you should look into our previous 3 videos about various changes that were happening in the European society, various movements that were happening in the society. It is properly given in the video sessions. So it will help you understand what led to the Europeans to go look into other continents, and what made them more civilized, what in their concept, what made them more civilized. Okay, and we will see the continent of North America extends from this is a geographical locations, and we will see the native people. The earliest inhabitants of North America came from Asia over 30,000 years ago on a land bridge across the Bering Straits. During the Ice Age, 10,000 years ago, they moved further south. The oldest artifact found in America was an arrow point that is 11,000 years old. The population started to increase about 5,000 years ago when the climate became more stable. Okay, after the Ice Age. These people lived in bands or groups, families, villages. They ate fish, cultivated vegetables, maize. They often went on long journeys in search of meat, chiefly that of bison. Okay, they only killed as many animals as they needed for food. Okay, that is to be noted. Okay, they did not attempt extensive agriculture, and since they did not produce surplus, they did not develop kingdoms or empires as in Central and South America. Okay, they were content with the food and shelter. They were happy with what they had. An important feature of their tradition was that making formal alliances and friendships and exchanging gifts. Okay, and goods were obtained and not by buying them but as gifts. Okay, there were numerous languages were spoken between the tribes. All these things are just brushed through it. Okay, in the 17th century, the European traders reached the north coast of North America. Okay, after a difficult 2-month voyage, were relieved to find the native people friendly. These people were friendly, just like in the South American case. Also, these people were friendly and welcoming, unlike the Spanish in South America, who were overcome by the abundance of gold in the country. These adventurers came to trade in fish and furs. Okay, they got the willing help of the natives who were expert in hunting. In exchange of local products, Europeans gave the native blankets, iron vessels, guns, which were useful supplement for bows and arrows to kill animals, and alcohol. This last item was something that natives had not known earlier, and they became addicted to it. So, what happened? Europeans began to dictate terms of trade. Okay, mutual precipitations. Okay, Western Europeans defined civilized people in terms of literacy and organized religion and urbanism. Okay, to them, the natives of America appeared uncivilized. So, to some, like the French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Okay, Jean-Jacques Rousseau is an important philosopher in the case of French Revolution and all. We'll read about it. Uh, he said he actually admired them as they were untouched by the corruptions of civilization. Okay, a popular term was the noble savage, in lines of a poem by English poet William Wordsworth. Okay, to the natives, the goods they exchanged with the Europeans were gifts given in for friendships. For Europeans dreaming of becoming rich, the fish and fur were commodities. Okay, and the natives didn't consider, see, they had not much any greater idea about trade and all. Okay, so goods were exchanged as a matter of friendship. Following the first Europeans who were traders were those who came to settle in America. Now the settlement starts. Okay, these people were actually persecuted by the majority community, different sect of Christianity, we can say. Especially there were conflicts between the Catholics and the Protestants. Okay, Catholics who were under the Pope, and the Protestants mainly they were under, we can say, the King of England, the Anglicans. All these people are Protestants, other than Catholics. Okay, natives and Europeans saw different things when they looked in at forest. Natives identified tracks invisible to the Europeans. Europeans imagined forests cut down and replaced. This paragraph here shows the different viewpoints of Europeans and the natives. Okay, Europeans saw everything through an economic eye, or we can say financial gain. But for the natives, it was different. It was sacred for them. And here we can see the expansion of the USA. We'll be discussing it in the coming sessions. And I'll just explain through it. It was, see, in 1783, which is in red color, this was actually the United States. Then Louisiana was purchased, Louisiana over here, Louisiana in dark green. It was actually purchased from French. And this light green area over here, this area was ceded by British. And the violet area, it was this violet area, Florida, it was purchased from Spain. And this area, Utah, was purchased from or ceded by Mexico. And we have Alaska over here, which was ceded by Russia. Okay, we will come to it later. Okay, the countries that were known as Canada and United States of America came into existence in the end of the 18th century. Over the next 100 years, they extended their control over more territory to reach their present state. That is what I explained before. They gained or acquired or bought up or fought wars to acquire territories, which we now see as Canada and America. Okay, landscapes of America changed drastically in the 19th century. Europeans treated the land differently from the natives. Some of the migrants from Britain and France were younger sons who didn't inherit anything, or some were people who lost their lands to the big farmers. Okay, and for the Polish people, they were happy to work in the prairie grasslands because which they reminded for the steppes in their homes. Okay, it was also a grassland. Okay, they cleared land and developed agriculture, introducing crops, and they also destroyed many animals. They actually hunted many animals because they wanted to be. They thought it was they could not be safe without killing them. And barbed wire, the invention of barbed wire, made them safe. Okay, and the northern states of USA, where the economy did not depend on plantations, there was actually a lot of slavery happening, and anti-slavery groups were also there trying to ban the slave trade. So what happened was there was a division between the slavery supporting groups and the those who were against slavery. Okay, especially the northern states, they wanted to abolish slavery because they thought it was inhuman. Okay, it was inhuman practice. In 1861 to 65, there was a war between the states that wanted to retain slavery and those supporting abolition. And those who supporting the abolition won, and slavery was abolished. It was only in the 20th century, and most of the blacks or the African Americans who won the battle for civil liberties and segregation of the whites and non-whites in schools. All these people, all these reforms happened recently. Okay, native people lose their land. Okay, how the natives were thrown out or removed from their land. In the USA, settlement was as the settlement expanded. Okay, more land was bought up at lower prices. Okay, for instances, Americans cheated on the natives. Okay, even high officials saw natives as a primitive people, and they thought they didn't belong to the society. Okay, they thought that they were not properly using the land. Okay, even we can see in this case. Even when the chief justice ordered land to be given to the Cherokee tribe, the president Andrew Jackson, who was actually talking about liberty and freedom, he was against the move. We can see Americans were actually not that welcoming to the native people. Okay, while the natives were pushed westward, given land elsewhere, but often moved again, if any. See, these people kept on pushing the natives to the western side. Actually, western side, the thing is that it is actually a desert area, and there is no proper vegetation there. And if there are any minerals or gold or petroleum reserves that were found, again the natives were thrown out of that area. Okay, that is what happened. And we will see here gold rush and the growth of the industries. Okay, and the gold was found in traces in the USA. And hearing of this, many Europeans hurried to America in hope of making quick fortune. This led to the building of railway lines. This actually led to the building of railway lines, and there were thousands of Chinese workers were recruited. And while in the case of Britain, it was actually the transportation of coal and iron, which led to the development of what railways. But in the case of USA, we can find gold rush actually benefited or resulted in the expansion of railways. Okay. And going down, large scale agriculture also expanded. Vast areas was cleared and divided into farms. Okay, and the European USA's continental expansion was complete. Okay, USA's continental expansion, USA formed. There was nothing much to be bought up, or there was no proper war to be needed. And then what happened is that there no longer remained the frontier that had pulled the European settlers. No longer the USA was no longer controlled by other European settlers. Within few years, USA was setting up its own colonies in Hawaii and in the Philippines. Okay, even in Philippines they bought land actually. Okay, uh, then constitutional rights. They were advocates of democracy, the democratic spirit, which had been in the rallying cry of the settlers in their fight for independence in the 1770s, came to define the identity of USA against the monarchies and aristocracies of the old world. Okay, but both democratic rights and the right of property. There's another important for them. That was their constitution included the individual's right to property, which could not be overridden. Okay, but both democratic rights, the right to vote for representatives to the Congress and for the president, and the right to property were only for white men. Okay, uh, that was that was a problem. Okay, now in 1920s, very recently. Okay, not only till 1920s did things begin to improve. Okay, the problems of Indian administration as survey director. It was like initially the Indians, the natives demanded rights for them to vote, as to be respected as their community, to respect their traditions. Okay, other than the European values. But it was actually initially rejected. But later on, due to the protests, they accepted it. Okay. Today, it is clear that the native peoples of both countries, though reduced so much in numbers from what they had been in the 18th century, had been able to assert their right to their own cultures, and particularly in Canada, to their sacred lands in a way their ancestors could not have done in 1880s. Okay. And in the case of Australia, now we are coming for Australia. Australia, I'll explain it in a lesser time. It is like, see, many of the people who came, many of the Europeans who came to Australia were actually prisoners Okay, there were also Aboriginal communities in Australia. They were actually founded by uh, Thomas Cook, Captain Cook. Okay, Captain Cook and his crew encountered the Aboriginals. They were also enthusiastic about their friendliness. Okay, but there was a problem. Okay, in Hawaii, as often happened, a single incident in which a native killed Cook. Okay, this single incident of nature was used by colonizers to justify subsequent act of violence towards the natives. Okay, a single native killed Cook, and that led to conflict between the natives and the Europeans. Okay, and as I was saying, there were prisoners who were actually extradited from the Britain or from the other European nations who came and settled in Australia. Okay, and they could live freely there. Hmm? And on a condition that they did not return to Britain with no recourse but to make a life of themselves in this land so different from their own. Okay, so they felt it was okay. Okay, uh, here also farming played an important role. Okay, important role for the country's development. Okay, and when the states were united, it was decided a new capital would be built in Australia in 1911. One name suggested it was wool wheat gold. Okay, ultimately it was called Canberra. Okay, Canberra, a native word meaning meeting place. Okay, and in this case, conditions of work was for the natives it was harsh, but it was little different from slavery. Later, the Chinese immigrants came and provided cheap labor. Okay, but okay, and there was also fear that Chinese would dominate the Europeans. So Chinese immigrants were banned, and also they were thought that dark people from South Asia or Southeast Asia might migrate to Australia in large numbers, and there was also a policy to keep non-white people out. Okay, and all these things changed, we can say, and we can say that the history of aboriginals were not properly represented. Okay, and so many universities or galleries, art museums, they began to search, they began to study the native cultures. Okay, the galleries of native art, all these things began to be explored. Okay, from 1974 multiculturalism has been the official policy of Australia, which gave equal respect to native cultures and the different cultures of the immigrants from Europe and Asia. Okay, and from the 1970s, thus the term human rights began to be heard on the meetings of UNO. Okay, other international organizations. The Australian public realized with dismay that, in contrast to the USA, Canada, and New Zealand, Australia had no treaties with the natives formalizing a takeover of land by Europeans. The government had always termed land of Australia terra nullius, that is, belonging to nobody. Okay. There were also long and agonizing history of children of mixed blood. Okay, agitations around, they were actually captured and separated from their native relatives. Okay, and they're often related to conflict about this. Discussions were happening in the Australian society. So this was actually a small brief explanation of this chapter about how native people were replaced by European society in Australia, Canada, and US. So I hope you people were able to follow the chapter today. So we'll be seeing you with another chapter in the next section. So thank you guys, and God bless you all. Jai Hind.